Building is a very important part of 7 Days to Die. Unless you have a nomadic playstyle, chances are that you use 7 Days to Die's building mechanics. From building a palace block by block, or if you're normal, building a Soviet-style brutalist concrete box with the only external access being the main door, the escape tunnel and some iron bars. Chances are you've done a lot of building in this game and have become quite familiar with the systems and mechanics involved. Well, in Alpha 20, we're going to see some changes to that. In today's video, I'll be going over what we know so far about the rework to the building progression and the shape menu. Before we jump into that, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Anyway, let's go in depth into the building rework coming in Alpha 20. So the changes coming to building in Alpha 20 can be categorized into two main groups: progression and quality of life. Let's cover progression first. So what do I mean specifically by progression? Well, as most of you will know, 7 Days to Die features a progressive building system. Right now, if you place a wooden frame and then add some wood, you get a wooden block. Then you can reinforce it with more wood to get reinforced wood, and that process continues all the way through to steel blocks. There are, of course, a few frame types like rebar or iron frames which let you skip those early stages and get into concrete without having to go through wood and stone first. Well, the stepping stone mechanic is essentially no more. Now, instead of upgrading wood to reinforce wood to stone to concrete to reinforce concrete to steel, it will simply go wood, stone, concrete and then steel. Steps between those upgrades are now gone. Madmole, co-founder of the Fun Pimps, has explained the need for these changes as such. Devs believe that having to click so many times to get from wood to steel is annoying and time consuming. They've also voiced a desire for quote, big meaty upgrades rather than the old gradual upgrade system, which makes sense if you look at some of 7 Days to Die's competitors in the survival genre like Ark Survival Evolved. In Ark, you go from thatch to wood to stone to metal to tech, each being a substantial upgrade from the previous. This change seems to be an overall attempt at making the upgrade paths more meaningful, intuitive and deliberate. But this change is also accompanied with a bit of an overall nerf to building in general. Currently, a lot of blocks will downgrade when damaged sufficiently. For example, steel will have 7,000 health, but when it reaches 0 health, rather than actually breaking, it simply becomes reinforced concrete, which has yet another 5,000 health, which means that steel effectively has 12,000 health. There are two problems with that. If you want to remove a steel block, it can take a very long time, which isn't fun, and zombies rarely on normal settings break a steel block all the way, never mind if you built a whole structure out of steel. Combine that with the fact that steel degrades into reinforced concrete, which is already a strong building block, it is not difficult to build a base that simply cannot be destroyed no matter what the game throws at you. Well now, block degradation has been mostly removed. Now when steel breaks, it breaks. I'm unsure if this applies to doors and things like that, but I would imagine they would work similarly to how they do now. But they have said they plan to rework doors to be less annoying to deal with in POI, so perhaps weaker doors may be coming as well. This change means that if you absolutely need to make some changes to your base that require the removal of blocks, it will be a lot easier, but you'll also have to worry a bit more about the strength of your base. Now let's move on to the other category of changes, the quality of life improvements. Currently, the build menu can be a bit useless in 7 Days to Die. Blocks are all over the place, some block types don't even have certain shapes. For example, one that always infuriates me is the lack of rebar stairs, meaning I have to go all the way from wood to get concrete stairs. Now stairs aren't something I have to use in huge numbers in my build, but for people who build for aesthetics or just have a particularly stairy horde base, this can be a genuine nightmare. Now, the build menu will be completely standardized. All the base blocks will be in every shape, and that shape will be selectable from the same position on every block's shape menu. This will speed up base building hugely for a lot of people. I know I avoid aesthetic building in 7 Days to Die because of the current shape menu, which is a shame because in the other voxel-based survival game, aesthetic building is all that I do. With the onset of this change, people who want to build a castle in survival will save huge amounts of time now that every block is standardized and the menu is organized consistently. Another feature which kind of falls under progression and quality of life is the removal of the wet concrete block. Now you don't have to wait for concrete to dry for it to reach full effectiveness, it simply upgrades from stone straight into regular concrete. So normally in these videos, after I've explained what features are coming, I would go over what effect I think they will have on the game. This section will be a bit smaller in this video because it's mostly self-explanatory. The effects are pretty simple. Hordes will be slightly harder because blocks will have slightly less health. Currently, most players won't bother to upgrade their entire base to steel until very late in the game when they have a lot of steel to throw around. but now that reinforced concrete has been removed, we may see a slight shift in the meta towards upgrading to steel much earlier than we would have in the current version. These changes may make the mid-game slightly more difficult overall. The shape menu changes are fairly simple as well. Standardization of the building systems will improve two things. It will make building aesthetically in survival much less frustrating and cut down on the time it takes to build something. More importantly though, it will open the building system up and allow new players to experiment without being intimidated or confused by the completely disorganized build systems we have now, meaning the game is much more accessible to new players, which in most cases, especially in this case, is a positive thing for the game. How does the community feel? Well, as ever, most are positive, happy to see an organised building system, and fairly receptive to the idea of removing partial upgrades in favour of what Madmo has called big meaty upgrades. Some players as ever have rallied under the cry that they're dumbing down the game whenever a feature is streamlined. This subsection of the gaming community exists in all games across every genre, and apparently they all just want things to be needlessly complicated for no reason. In the original script I went on a very big rant about how simplification of a game systems is usually a good thing, but you know what? A computing science student probably isn't qualified enough to teach you about user experience, so if you want to know more about why I don't think simplification is a bad thing, do some research on a field called interaction design or user experience. A bunch of old dudes way smarter than me with a lot more experience in the field can explain it better anyway. In my opinion at least, I would call this a justifiable simplification, as it speeds up the learning process for new players while having next to no effect for those of us who have hundreds if not thousands of hours in the game. And if you personally really care about not having reinforced wood anymore, and the non-issue of so-called simplification, or as some who hide in the minority among the 7 Days to Die community like to call it, the dumbing down of the game, go outside and touch some grass, because holy shit, who cares? But what about you? How do you feel about these changes? Are these too much or too little? Are you going to be trying some aesthetic building with the new shape menu? Let us know down in the comments. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.